All right, DJ Leroy.
Night Watchman, how you doing, buddy?
Good, good. Monday night back here on Soul Lounge Prime Time on WHCR 90.3 FM.
Another week has gone by, and you know what? COVID is still around, buddy. Still around. But during this particular period,
still around, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact,
I almost put on my mask, but then I remember we were
exactly. We're not together.
We're online, so
that's right. So, so we got to
see that little line between my box and your box separating us.
so literally, this is not even 6 feet. This is a lot more. You know,
right? Well, it's in real life, it's more than 6 feet. So I think we're okay.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, those of us who've been following us know that we have not been doing our shows in the studio since March.
That's right.
The last person on our show, we're having her back. What she was here to talk about then was so important, and we needed to bring her back. So Pharein Griffith is with us today, and she is going to talk to us about the census.
And you know what? That she
Census
has power.
2020.
Well, Night Watchman, you know that she has power and impact, because literally immediately after that particular show, I understand that you and I both ran out and completed our census form, the 10 questions.
Absolutely. So we want to start out by saying, everybody, we need 10, 10, 10 from everybody for 2020. Now, what is the 10, 10, 10, Pharein?
10 minutes of your time to fill out 10 questions that's going to have a 10-year impact. Yeah.
Wow.
That's not too much to ask.
10 years.
So that's too much.
Yeah. That's the best 10 minutes you're going to spend. And that impact is really a lot more than most people are really realize. So, Pharein, just tell us a little bit about how important this census is and why we all need to make sure it's filled out, and we need to do it like right now.
So yes, we really need to do it right now, because they'll be knocking on doors. The enumerators will be doing the non-response follow-up beginning on August 11th.
Okay.
So the census. So I can go into what the census is really quick. The census. The United States Census Bureau, they conduct a myriad of different surveys. So it's a survey. They do one for economic survey. They do the American Community Survey. And then the one that we will be conducting, that's going on right now, is the decennial census. And that is every 10 years. They do a population count of who's in the country for representation in government, Congress, and then federal funding. So I'll start with the federal funding side, because that's how that impacts our everyday, day to day. So we'll start with education. Pell Grants are funded by, it's federally funded. That's why when you go to school in-house versus in-state versus out-of-state, there's a different, the tuition, the amount is different. And that's through the Pell Grants, which you can apply for the Pell Grants. That's a federal program. And then we'll bring it down to elementary, high school, middle school, breakfast and lunch in schools. That is a national federal program. Also, we have after-school programs. After-school programs that you're not paying for are being federally funded. So your YMCAs, your children aid societies, your police athletic leagues, like here in New York, the PALs. They're being federally funded for those programs. Moving into healthcare. In 2010, New York State only responded 64%. Households responded to the census, 64%. So that means New York State only received 64% of funding. That had to stretch 100%. So now what is that? What type of impact would that have in healthcare? We didn't know we was going to have a pandemic. So here we go in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, where the hospitals were short on PPE. personal protection equipment in the hospitals, and that was due to their budget not having enough. So they only had a little bit of supplies, even though it was a pandemic. Even if it wasn't as severe that it was, they still wouldn't have had all of the PPE that they needed. So those are some of the impacts, like with healthcare, right? So Medicaid is one as well, since we're talking about healthcare. Food and nutrition, health and healthcare. So now we're talking about public assistance, the WIC, Women, Infant, and Children program. We're talking about the SNAP, the TANF programs. Those are all federally funded programs. We'll move into housing. Housing. NYCHA is federally funded. Their capital money comes in from the federal government. If you recall, 2 years ago, when the HUD secretary, the housing secretary Ben Carson, Ben Carson, and it was back and forth, and they had the woman sleep in the NYCHA.
Oh yeah,
they wanted, right? Remember that, and that was due to because the federal government is putting the money in, and now they want to see what's happening, where's the money going, and so forth. You know, so that's housing. Section 8 as well.
By the way, after she did that, in terms of spending a night or two in NYCHA housing, was there a report? Did she give her impressions of what it was like to actually be a NYCHA resident for that limited time?
I believe so. I don't know. I'm not in that field in general. Okay. Aside of the census, I'm not in the housing field. But I believe that she did the assessment. They end up getting a new person here in New York to head up the New York City Housing Authority. So they do have a new person here. Yes.
Got it.
So Section 8 is another federal program, right? So we just did education, we did healthcare, we did housing. Now let's go into businesses, right? So for the businesses use the data from the census to open up business or to open up additional businesses. They do a survey when you go to the register. I'll just use Victoria's Secret just because they're now on 125th Street, right? So when you're shopping at Victoria's Secret, 34th Street, Jersey, wherever, and they ask you what's your zip code, they punch in your zip code. They match that data up from people coming into the stores. They match it up with how many people in this community in Harlem. I'll use 10026. How many people in 10026 actually have Victoria's Secret cards? Right? How many people are shopping even if they don't have a card? How many deliveries are being sent to 10026? Matched up with the data from the in-store purchases. Right. So if you're Jamaican, you want to open up a Jamaican restaurant, you're not going to open it in the middle of the desert. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't serve a purpose. There's no need. It doesn't show a need where you're going to make money. So their census, they use a census. They use a census data, and then the last thing I will say, which is really the primary reason for the census, is for representation and government. So, as everybody remembers in U.S. history, there's only 435 members of Congress. It doesn't matter which state they come from. It's never going to exceed 435. So this is how you get to determine how many comes from your state is based on the population count of your state. So each district is made up of, each congressional district, is made up of roughly 740,000 people, not voters. So even the 1-year-olds are entitled to fair representation. So they're part of the count. That's why you must count your children, ladies and gentlemen. Please count your children. Children, Black men are undercounted. Parents they choose to either not participate in the census at all, or when they do not count their children because 9 times out of 10, they see their child as an extension of themselves, not utilizing their own services and resources. So I can stop there.
So this goes back to that goes back to the 10-year impact you were talking about. So if somebody has a 1-year-old today and they fill out the census, That means that 1-year-old is represented so that when resources are allocated for kids, whether it's in 4 years where they're 5 years old or going into kindergarten, or whether they're 7 or whether they're 8 or whether they're 9, those resources that are available to fund programs for that child over the next 10 years are counted because you counted your child. Or if you didn't fill it out, when you're wondering why 4 or 5 years later, why is your child in a school where it's overcrowded, or why are there no programs to fund the activities for your child, you're not realizing that you didn't take the 10 minutes back in 2020 to make sure that your child was counted so that those resources would be there.
Exactly.
And
the seats in the classroom, the amount of students that are in every classroom, there is a limit for how many students are in a classroom. And we had thankful to union. I am union proud. I am a supporter. And the UFC, for my New York City folks, the United Federation of Teachers, and the American Federation of Teachers, AFT, that's what they lobbied for, to make sure that the classrooms are not overcrowded. That there's going to be a cap, because it's very hard for a teacher to have the full attention of an overcrowded classroom of 40 students, right? And it doesn't matter what age of the students. That's hard to teach in a classroom. That becomes very challenging to get the attention of a classroom that's 40 students. So each grade level is allocated, the seats are allocated based on the data from the census when they're talking about children. To your point, Bob, somebody who doesn't fill out the survey right now and they have a 2-year-old, that child's going to be 12. And then you want to know why you can't get your child into the local middle school right across the street, because it's already filled. They already have their capita. They already know how many students is supposed to be in each class. So when you rant and rave, you go to the district office, and then they put your child in there, your child makes the classroom crowded. So you can't be the one that's talking about, oh, my child doesn't have enough books and all of these things. Right. Your child made the classroom crowded. So now the teacher is coming out of their personal pocket, right, and buying extra supplies and all of these things, because there's a budget is set. So money comes into the state from the federal government. It comes down into the districts who are performing well, who have the population. That's where the money is going. And unfortunately for the Black community, for us, we tend not to participate when we should and how we should. So we get the short end of the stick in many ways.
So Pharein, one of the things I wanted to know.
Tell us a little bit about what happened. You go ahead.
Oh yeah. So Pharein,
DJ
so in the can you hear me? Good.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So in the last census, 2010, we certainly had some dramatic things happening. So the census happens, and then the legislative body then redraws district lines, because at one point the 13th congressional district, once represented by Charlie Rangel, also included the boundaries of Columbia University, the Morningside campus. That's no longer in the 13th district. That is now, of course, in Jerry Nadler's district. Of course, we have the Manhattanville stuff. But so why does that happen? And who is the determinant in terms of drawing the new lines when the census is completed?
Oh, sure. So as I stated before, there's only 435 members of Congress. How we get them is based on the population. So after the numbers go to the president, then reapportionment starts. So they start with the federal lines, and then it trickles down to the state, to the city for our New York City residents. And then for outside of New York City, it goes into the county. You have your superintendents, your county execs, and so forth, So what happened? Right. So they redid the lines after 2010. So that was about, I think they saw it in 2010. So it should have took place in 2012. About 2012.
Okay.
Actually took place. Right. So this district actually goes from East Harlem, Central Harlem, Washington Heights, it skips over Columbia, which I recently just found that out. I didn't realize it no longer had, I thought it had that part of Columbia. It has Washington Heights, Inwood, crosses over the Harlem River. No, is that the Harlem River? Yeah, it crosses over the river and goes into River Park Towers, Cedric, all the way back around Kingsbridge Terrace.
So all in the West Bronx, huh?
All of the West Bronx, starting at River Park Towers, though. Cedric, all the way to Woodlawn Cemetery, down Webster. It's like a crazy line. So who's responsible for that, right? So who's responsible for that is each state, after it goes to the reapportionment, begins after it comes from the president, then it goes, then the state legislators, so the head, so it would be right now for this process, it would be the Speaker of the Assembly, Carl Hastie, and right, and the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins. They together, right? So they appoint people to be on the redistricting commission, and they're the ones who are responsible for drawing said lines. Now, those lines are, they are party, they're definitely germane to parties, right? And they also are they're driven by party and then by demographic. So this is how in the southern states, how they're drawing black folks out of certain areas, and that's where gerrymandering comes into play. The people who are sitting at the table, they're making it harder for the black residents, voters, if you will, to have access to the ballot in the southern states, right? So they're making up, they're making the representation. It may be a black community. All of a sudden, they draw the line, and now that black community has a white representative. No longer, now resides in a new district, and then that's not a, it's not. I'm just using the black and white for example purposes. And then, so now they don't have fair representation, or they have less access to the ballot through gerrymandering. They draw out the lines. They make the poll center, the polling site will be further away, 10 miles. I mean, here in New York, we don't, in the city, we don't have that. In the rural communities, we definitely have that. So, people look at New York as just being New York City, and we have like 61 counties. So, we have cows and farms and stuff. People don't look at New York State as having those, that type of demographic. But yeah, so that is a big thing. The gerrymandering, access to the ballot. That's how that it all takes place after the count when it goes to redistricting. And the census data is also used, since we're talking about voting, it is also used to get your ballot in your native language. Because the census, the American Community Survey, which is every year, but that's sent random to people randomly in zip codes. And they ask 75 questions. Do you own a car? Do you ride a bike? Highest level of education, income, so forth, and language, so forth, right? So when they're looking to, like for Queens versus New York County, Queens has like 6 or 7 languages on the ballot. And in New York County, Manhattan, we only have 3. And that's because there's like over 220 languages spoken in Queens. Right? So those advocates for those specific languages that are on the ballot, they went to the Board of Election, they showed the data, somebody pulled the data and showed this population heavily speaks this particular language, and we need our ballots in our language to service our community because they are voting block and they are counted in the census. They are shown on paper. The data shows these people exist, and this is the language they speak, and they're registered voters. We need our ballots in these languages.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I want to remind people right now, we've got the number right there on the screen, so you can write this down right now. So you don't even have to wait. You can, while you're listening to us, you can call, or you can call right after you finish. But you can call 844-330-2020 to respond by phone. So we want to give that information. I also want to to go back to just the issue of all right, I had a brain thought and it just it just left me. There's so many.
Was it the impact?
There's so many aspects to it. It was.
I think you was trying to mention the impact.
I'm gonna have to come back to it.
Well, one thing for sure, you got to continue to emphasize how painless the process is, because it really is. Pharein, I was also like stupefied at how simple it was just to do the stuff and quick. I mean, I could have even my favorite beverage in the background, while doing it, and voila, I'm done. I am counted. I am part of the system. I am part of the solution. So yes, bravo.
Yes, 10 question, no citizenship question, no social security number question, 10 questions. They just need to know who lives in the house and what is their relationship to you and your race. For the first time, we're able to put our race. So you can check black and you can put you're from Barbados. You can put black from Nigeria. You can put black and you can put from Costa Rica. And that's for the first time ever.
Nice.
Right. And then they just want to know who.
That's actually what.
You can also have multiracial.
That's actually what I was going to ask.
Well, I mean, they have a other box, but so let me go into that. Let me tell the difference of that. So when you put multiracial, race is a protected category, right? So for the black race, that's a protected category. Putting black. When you're fighting racial justice, social justice, you're fighting on behalf of who? On behalf of blacks, not behalf of Asians, not on behalf of Nigerians, but on behalf of the black race. When we're they're looking to do medical research for sickle cell anemia that's prevalent in the black community. They're looking for data that specifies black, not other, not mixed. Right? You can happily represent both sides on the form, but when it comes to race, we are urging the black community, whether if you're from the Pan-African diaspora, to check black as your race, and then you can put down, Panamanian. You can put or anything else you want to put, for your nationality, your family lineage. But we want to make sure that people understand that this country, this is the first time. And this is because of advocates. They wanted to identify as their race. We were colored, we were Negro on the form. We were never black as we want to be black as the race, and then specify where we are from.
Got it.
On the homeland and so forth. And I also, if I may, I want to speak about, I would like to say how private is confidential. Your information is not shared. It's under the Constitution, under the U.S. Code 13, Title 1, Article 1. You cannot, the U.S. Census Bureau cannot, under any circumstance, share your information with any other agency, organization, or entity.
So you're telling me that ICE will not be knocking on my door coming in?
Will not be knocking at your door. Your landlord will not be coming saying you put on a lease, you have 3 people and your thing says 5. No, that information is not shared with ICE, NYCHA, Public Assistance, HRA for my New York folks. It will not be shared in those in any of those entities. They are sworn for a lifetime, 5 years imprisonment, $250,000 fine. And this means even if the employee leaves the federal government, the U.S. Census Bureau, if they are in the private sector, they cannot share your information. They are sworn a lifetime.
Nice. So, Night Watchman, is that you sharing that?
Yes. So there you can see it in black and white. It's a legal duty they have to protect our information, and $250,000 is a huge incentive to not break their privacy. So this is important. If you are an immigrant of any status, you can fill this out and not. Oh, and this is important, and I think we wanted to talk about this because this is one of the things that Trump was trying to make some noise about, but he is protected against doing so because of the Constitution. correct?
Right. The Supreme Court, right. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court shot it down. For a citizenship question, you cannot ask that because in the Constitution, it says every 10 years, the country, there has to be a population count. Every 10 years. It doesn't matter who is here. If you're living here, you need to be counted. You need to have fair representation. You're using the train, you're using the bus, you're going to the hospital, your child's in school, you're paying taxes. This is, you know, this is all the reasons why one would fill it out. And we know the Black community is very apprehensive on, and the immigrant community on responding to anything that has the government, you know, attached to it. So we want to make sure that people are self-responding. The period that we're in right now is called the self-response. And we're trying to encourage people to fill it out on their own because the door knockers, the enumerators, as they're called, will start knocking on doors on August 11th to those residents who have not yet responded to the census. And we New York needs this money. I mean, there's a severe impact, you know, and you know, the impact of filling it out versus not filling it out. 2010, Washington Heights led the country in census response. They got 5 brand new dual language schools in Washington Heights. 5, not charter, public school. 5.
Wow.
The impact of not filling it out. Brooklyn was in the lowest 10% of completing the census. 4 hospitals, 4 public hospitals in Brooklyn closed down between 2010 and today. So I want people to see that impact, that type of impact. When you fill it out, you get services. When you don't fill it out, you lose, and you lose out severely. 4 hospitals is a lot. Brooklyn is the largest borough in population.
That's significant. And Pharein, that's interesting.
Just to bring that home, for our COVID pandemic crisis, can you imagine the impact of 4 hospitals missing during the worst pandemic in the last 100 years? So we could not have predicted the pandemic, but what you can predict is that the lack of resources harms us incredibly. And we talk about, you know, we've all had the conversations about systemic racism and lack of resources, but what we have to do is take accountability that this is something that we can do to ensure that the resources come to our community. And if we don't, as a community, stand up and be counted, then, you know, we have a 10-year drought of resources. And that's a long time.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, indeed.
So can I give the stats? So right now, the country, 62.5 households in the United States and the 5 U.S. territories have completed the census already. 62%. That's not enough.
That's not enough.
New York State, 57.9 households have already completed the census. So that means right now, New York, we're only going to receive 57.9 of the funding, which we know we need 100%. New York City is at 53.7%.
Wow.
That's
real low.
Right. So out of $100, we're only going to get 53.7. Right. And then for the boroughs, the lead borough is Richmond County, which is Staten Island.
Staten Island. Who would know?
58.6% of those household residents have filled out the census. New York County, Manhattan Borough is at 55.3. The Bronx is at 55.1. Queens is at 53.7, and Kings County is at 50.8. Now, what does that really mean? That means that we're only going to get half of what we're entitled to. Out of the 100% of funding today, we're only going to receive, New York State is only going to receive like 57% of the federal funding.
Wow.
To do what? To go to be stretched out, you know, to the different entities, to different programs, services, and activities.
And literally, the count cannot be amended. Correct.
53%.
So, I heard Bob. New York is at 53, right? So we're at 53.7, 53.8. So today's number will probably be at 53.8, and those are households. not individuals. Remember, this is about households. So it comes to the household resident. It doesn't say any name on the envelope because they don't know who's in there. They're trying to find out who's in there. So it will say resident. So they're looking at the residents, how many of the residents have responded. Then they will tally all of the individuals for the population, and those numbers of how many people actually reside in the U.S. and the 5 U.S. territories will go to the president, the total count of people of the population. But right now they mailed it to the residents, and they want the residents to respond. So we need the residents, we need people to respond. The key holders are very important. If you're a roommate, somebody who checks the mail needs to sit down and get the information from the other roommates. All they need from the roommate is their full name and their date of birth. That's it. You don't need anything else. Somebody's living in the attic. You renting. If you have a place and you're subletting to someone else, no problem. You just make sure that you're counting them, or you give them the responsibility to respond at that address. Right? It's either or. Somebody, either the person whose apartment it legally is responds, or if they're letting the subletter answer, then they should do so. But somebody needs to answer in that residence. If you're in NYCHA, count all 12. I've been doing census myself during the pandemic. I've been when they're doing food pantries, the Fred Samuels
Democratic Club.
No, the community center on Malcolm X. Yeah. So they're NYCHA, they have been giving away PPE and food. So I've been there doing census. And I'm here to tell you, there are residents that have multi-generations in the house. I've done people's census, and they had 11, 12 people living in a house.
Wow.
Right. 4 generations. That is a lot. That's the babies for school. You have the senior services, the pantries and the senior centers, they get federal funding too. It's coming by way of the city, but it's still coming into the state via the federal government. So I just want to say that. So we want to hear everybody to count. It doesn't matter if it's 12 people, or it's 9 people, or it's just one person. And I wanted to say, if it's for a household of like 8, you're going to need a little extra time to fill it out, because that's 8 people that you're putting the information down. That's it. And check on the seniors, because the seniors haven't been responding because they haven't been outside to mail back the form. And a lot of the seniors, they're old school. They're going to do what they're told. They receive the actual form, so they're going to mail back the form. But they have other options to respond, other ways. So I just want the seniors listening to know that just because you received it in the mail, the actual form, doesn't mean that you have to mail back the actual form. You can call the number that's on there instead to make sure you're counted. You can call the 844-330-2020 number and do it over the phone. I just wanted to say that, because a lot of seniors, they have every intention on doing so, sending it back, but they have not been outside due to the pandemic and their vulnerability, of catching the virus. So I just wanted to put that out there, because there's a lot of seniors are not responding. So like Esplanade Garden is not responding.
Wow.
Yeah. So so when we're talking about low census response in 2010, that is called a census tract. So from 155th south side of the street, where the Boys and Girls Club is at, all the way to 150th, from Bradhurst all the way over to Esplanade Garden, they're right now at 46% completing the census. In 2010, they was at 70.4%. That is too large of a chunk of missing people not responding. And that's due to the pandemic. So that is huge. So we know we cannot have that. So we want to make sure that because we know that they respond. They are a large voting block here in Harlem, right? So we want to make sure that they're responding. So yesterday I was at Harlem River. They was doing food distribution. I was there helping residents, complete their census. So we have a couple of the Harlem Count Committee. We have a bunch of different events, pop-ups happening next week. My voice is a little hoarse because we did the caravan on Saturday, and we had 10 pop-up locations. So a little shy of 100 people, residents got to fill out their census at those locations. And then at the ending of the route, we had about 6 or 8 more that we stopped on the street that did not complete their census. So
So Pharein, so let's say in a development such as Esplanade Gardens, do you approach tenant leadership there, and letting them know, hey, your response is low, you guys need to get on it?
Absolutely. So some of the residents have asked me to come, because they saw me at the Fred Samuels Community Club, Community Center, excuse me. So they were, they asked, well, I said they haven't been responding, and they have given me the inside. So I've been dealing with residents who are in leadership that I think they call building captains. And then I've been dealing with the management. And then, so I have been dealing, so we have something in the works for next week. We want to make sure that they are responding. And I think they would feel safer, coming down into the lobby than going all the way to the post office.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I just want to say I'm safely protected. I protect myself. I have my mask. We're usually 6 feet apart. The desk is a little, the table sizes, right? They vary. So the intent is always to be 6 feet apart. But it's confidential. So if we have people waiting, they have to be a little bit closer just so that people are not hearing their personal information, because the information is confidential what they are sharing.
Gotcha. Wow. Well,
and Pharein, if you could just recap some of the groups that are routinely under-reporting, such as, I think you mentioned infants, you mentioned obviously our seniors, and you mentioned Black men. So maybe you can just kind of elaborate on those specific groups and any other groups that you see are routinely undercounted.
Okay. So I will remove seniors from that. The seniors right now are due to the pandemic. But overall, historically, the immigrant population, they are what they deem as the hard to count population. The Black community is hard to count. Children are hard to count, and so it's the immigrant population, the Black men, children. I feel like I'm missing one, but historically, the Black community to count because Black men. Thank you, and Black and the Black men. And I hate to say this, even in my experience of helping residents complete their census, every time, so they ask twice, does anybody else live in a house? Foster children, adopted children, stepchildren, friend, somebody sleeping on the couch, that was that's residing with you because of an emergency, you're staying, a friend is staying, they got burnt out or something like that, non-relative. So when they ask these, and I'm very glad that they asked the question, because through that question, somebody would say, oh yeah, well, I do have, my nephew's staying with me. Oh, well, I have, and it's always this is in my personal experience, it's always a Black male, whether it's a child, whether it's a grown man, whether it's their, their grown son, or the boyfriend, it's always I'm just speaking of my own experience, it's always a Black male.
Who are non-responsive.
No, that people know that the person who's responding for the household is not counting them.
Got it.
So they're like, oh, we have 2 people. So, but then one of the questions asked, like, is a roommate? So they ask, specific. Like, do you have a foster child, adopted child? Like they ask specifically, naming people so that you can, if they fall in line with one of those categories, then you say yes. And then out of that, somebody said, oh yes, well, I do have my nephew. Oh, my grandson. And it's always I just that's in my experience. So I'm saying that to say, when they talk about the Black men being hard to count, these are the reasons why.
Got it.
Not counting whoever is the head of the household is not counting them.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's important to just number one, dispel any misconceptions about it. So if your ex was living with you on April 1st, you want to count him. Counting him doesn't mean he gets to stay there anymore, and you're not conferring any rights. You're just basically, if the ex was no good, the one good you can get out of him is counting him toward the census. So we want to do that. With the immigrant population, we want to emphasize that, number one, there are multiple languages where you can either fill out either online or by phone. I believe by phone, the languages that they have. We showed the English number, but for phone, I believe they have French, they have Haitian French, they have Spanish, they have Arabic, and they have a number of Asian languages as well. 13. Yeah. So there's 13 languages.
And then it's 50 and for directions. For instruction, yes. It's like 52, I think. Yeah, it's a large number.
Right.
And then we have the TV.
So to reemphasize for immigrant populations, A, that the languages are there, and B, none of the information ever goes to ICE or any other federal agency. It's federally prohibited. So there's a safety in your privacy, and it'll make a difference in your next 10 years to be counted. And for seniors, as we said, what we want to do is for those seniors who have been sequestered by COVID-19, you can let them know. They can respond by phone. Every senior has a landline, and most of them have cell phones as well. And so, so even if they don't want to get it from the mailbox, they can just take 10 minutes on the phone, and they can make sure that they're counted. And your children, count your children. Count your children.
I want to say this: online means any device that connects to the internet. So these $1,000 smartphones, you can do it online on your phone. You can do it on a tablet. You can do it on a laptop. You know, any device that connects to the internet. When we say online, that's any device that connects to the internet.
Wow. So
and to go online, you can go to My Census. Listen for our radio audience, mycensus2020.gov.
So that's incorrect, if I may. It's my2020census.gov. So that's my 20.
No, oh, you're right. You are right. You're right. Okay, hold on. Let me make that change.
Night Watchman.
Thank you.
Night Watchman.
Hey,
who works for the census and who does not?
Good.
Okay.
I'm good, but I'm not perfect. Okay.
So my2020census.gov. My2020census.gov. G-O-V.
And interesting, Pharein, one of the reasons I guess men are sometimes not counted. Let's say if you're on a NYCHA housing, and remember, I'm a single woman. I'm living there with my children and whatnot. There is no man on the lease. I'm scared that if they are counted, somehow that my lease is going to be affected with NYCHA housing. Is that one of the reasons that is also given?
Yes. So especially for here in New York for the NYCHA residents, so they have fear of that, and even all residents, they fear of the landlord finding out people are staying. The landlord has nothing to do with this. The federal government, the U.S. Census Bureau does not share your information. So the landlord has no idea who's in there. They won't have no idea unless you are telling the landlord yourself, because they cannot get that information. They cannot obtain that information from the U.S. Census Bureau at all. HRA, they're not sharing anything with HRA. HRA is not sharing with NYCHA, only what they're supposed to share when you tell them you're receiving resources through HRA. That's the only way that they're contacting them. But yes, for my NYCHA residents, please complete the census. You're a directly recipient because the overhead capital is paid for by the federal government. Anything that's happening, we want our parks, our playgrounds to look better. That's federal money.
Right.
Just playgrounds, right? Our infrastructure, what the roads look like. When we're driving on the highway right now, they're expanding the Major Deegan is being expanded. 87 is being expanded on up in the Bronx. because, you know, all of the traffic. So when we're stuck in traffic, we're not concerned on who's a citizen or not. We just want to get the heck out of traffic. We know there's 100 cars in front of us, right? So, you know, the citizenship question is not a factor. It's not on there at all. The Trump administration definitely tried it.
Yep, they did.
Right now, he's still trying it right now. He is, I think he just signed an executive order. He's trying to not count the immigrant population.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Which is ironic because you don't know that they're immigrants because there's no question on there that asks for citizenship. So, you know, he's just blowing the dog whistles, you know.
Right. And he actually hasn't read the Constitution, so he probably doesn't know.
Well, it's non-partisan, non-political.
Yeah, true. True.
Right. But whatever your decision or political persuasion, if you want your vote to count, if you want the most leverage in your voting, you have to do this now. And so I want to recap one more thing. So you are encouraging everybody now to self-report. You can do that by phone, mail, or online. But if you don't self-report on August 11th, enumerators or census takers or counters will begin door knocking to places where they haven't responded. Now, how long will that period go on?
Until October 31st.
Okay.
So that was the extension.
August 11th to October 31st. That got extended because of COVID.
Right.
If somebody comes to your door saying they're a census taker, please believe them. Don't hurt them. Treat them well. And above all, and I know that everybody who hears us today will have filled this out way before August 11th. But if for some reason it doesn't happen, or they knock on your neighbor's door and they're getting ready to release the pit bull on them, don't do that. You know, let them get the information. Make sure we're counted.
Well, hold it, Night Watchman. I have the Pharein. Please let me know that there is at least appropriate identification that they'll be carrying. Do you have yours on you?
Yes, I do not work for the federal government.
Okay.
I am with the NAACP, and I'm the chair of the Harlem Count Committee, and we are a national and a local trusted partner.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
The Census Bureau is fully aware of the apprehensiveness to engage with federal government. They are aware. That's why they have partnerships with the local community-based organizations, churches, businesses, because they are, right there to speak to their residents. So the identification, but I do know what they will be carrying.
Okay.
They will have a badge. Their laptop will have the seal on it from the Census Bureau along with their bag. So everything will be in accordance with the Census Bureau. You'll have everything will say United States Census Bureau, the badge, everything.
Got it.
They don't have a standard uniform, but professionalism. But they will have their badge, their credentials, if you will, and the bag and the laptop itself will have the credentials from the U.S. Census Bureau. So thank you for asking that, because there are a lot of scams. And I say this because now the federal government, the Census Bureau has been reaching out to those who already completed the census, but they may have an error or question on it to make sure that everything is okay, like a misspelling or something like that. So if someone that was listening right now who received a phone call from the U.S. Census Bureau, not to be alarmed, they asked number on the form just for in case of that. So there have been people, like my cousin called me this morning actually, and she's like, oh, well, I got a call, but I hung up, and they called back twice. And I said, because she has 2 residents, she has a big, right. So on her form, it asks, does she have does somebody in that household stay someplace else? So you have to respond for every one of your residents, even if you have a vacation home. But you on there, when they add the very last question, ask, does someone on this list that you put in, does someone reside somewhere else? And then you put yes, college, dorms, or what have you. And I want to people that lived on college dorms and that live in the shelters and the inmates, they are counted in group quarters at their location. So even for the students who came home through the pandemic, the date for the census is April 1st. So as of April 1st, where were you? If you were still in the roster for being in a dorm, the college campus has already counted you, right? In the prison and the shelters.
Okay. Yes. So even go ahead, Night Watchman. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, you know, we're going to wrap up, and I just wanted to recap what this is all about and remind people for 2020 we need 10, 10, 10 for everybody. It's real simple. It's 10 minutes to answer 10 questions for a 10-year impact. You don't want to miss this. It's so easy. You can respond online, by phone, by mail, or if you miss those opportunities, in person with a census taker. But one way or the other, you want to do this. If you want to do it online, you can go to my2020census.gov. If you want to do it by phone, and write this stuff down, because you can share this information with people. To do it by phone, call 844-330-2020. And if you do those things, the next 10 years here in Harlem can be the 10 years we want to have, not the 10 years that we're fearful of having.
Yeah, I like that.
That's all I have to say.
Fearful of having. I like that.
Yeah.
Take all these lines and use them, Pharein. I know that you're out there every day. First of all, I want to personally thank you on behalf of myself and DJ Leroy and the community, because you have been on this issue from the beginning of the year. People were making jokes because she didn't say Happy New Year. She said, what was it? Happy Census Year or something.
Yes, indeed.
She's been creating the awareness. And the thing is, it's still such an uphill battle that every conversation we have is important. Every time we get a chance to reach one more person who's like, oh, I wasn't aware it had that much impact, or oh, I wasn't aware it's that easy to do. Or, oh, the things I was afraid of, I actually don't need to be afraid of because that's protected.
That's right.
So.
Right. And yesterday,
I think that's our.
When somebody I was helping yesterday, that's it. I was like, we're done. She was like, that's it. Exactly. Waited all this time, and that was it.
Yeah, like I said, when I did it on my time, I said, wow, this thing it's so simple, so easy, you know, and I'm done. And I feel good. I can stick my chest out. Yeah, I did my census. So I'm good. I'm good.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
So,
thank you.
If you are watching this on either YouTube or Facebook, we ask you that you share this information. Obviously, we want you to like and subscribe to our channel. But above all, this particular show, we want you to share the information. If you are listening on the radio, make sure you wrote down this information and share it with your family and friends. Together, we can all make a difference. This is just as important, if not more so, than your vote. And not that your vote is not important, but this is going to determine how much voting power we have, how much resource power we have, how much school education resources we have, how much healthcare and hospital resources, mental health, community resources on every level are determined by this. So stand up and be counted for the Census 2020.
Absolutely.
That's it. We're out of time.
And you know what? This was only supposed to be a 30-minute spot. And see, Pharein, she does it again. Comes down, and all this information that she imparts, so valuable. So we always have to extend that. Yeah. So thank you, Pharein.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Thank you.
And Pharein, you have an open invitation. If there's any other information during this process you feel you need to share, let us know, and we will have you back on.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So you've been listening to Soul Lounge Prime Time or watching Soul Lounge Prime Time on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, live streaming on WHCR.org. You'll also find us on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. We're all over the place. So we'll be back again every Monday night, 7 to 8 on the radio, live streaming on YouTube at 8 o'clock.